Thank you for joining
Recording in
today's media
progress.
availability with Mammoth General Manager Bill Armstrong to preview the NHL draft. If you have a question for Bill, please raise your hand and wait to be called on. Let's start with Catherine from UtahMammoth.com.
Hey, Bill, draft only a few days away, and I was wondering, could you touch on the process that starts even before the combine, but maybe this past month? What does your team and the organization focus on from meetings, combine, taking players out to dinner, all the way until draft night?
Yeah, well, I've always said it's a process. Like, you got to follow the process. We've been at it for a few years, and it's really getting the best list from your area scouts and your head scouts, and exploring who you're going to get at the range you're at. When you do that, you get into that range, and you do it. You exhaust the process, as I call it, of going through every single player, meeting them at the combine, going through their testing, going through their video, reading all the research that your staff has done on them, and then sometimes taking them to dinner, sometimes going to meet their families, going to their houses, or going to dinner with their families. We love to get to know them as much as we can.
Dana Green with ABC.
Thanks for doing this. Do you almost feel like you're playing with house money just because you moved up from 14 to 4? And you want to make the best possible pick if you do make the pick, but is that kind of the feeling that there is just this level of fortune going into this draft?
I don't really view it that way. I've kind of forgotten that we won the lottery, and so it's really about picking at 4. And it's like someone would say to you, "Oh, you got all these picks and second rounders," and I say to people when we have those picks, pretend it's like the only pick you have. Don't get in the thought process of going, oh, we got so many, we can give it away. No. Picks are hard to come by, and you've got to really focus in on what you have and really get into the range of players that are there and value one pick at a time. So, I'm over the giddiness. I think of winning the 4, and now we're at 4. Let's go to work.
Bill Fraser, Salt Lake Tribune.
Hey, Bill. At this point, how open do you remain or not remain about moving the 4th pick, and have you fielded any offers leading up to the draft?
Well, yes, and listen, at this process, every GM, especially the guys that are in the top 10, are all jockeying around and seeing, can they move up, can they move down, what's the best option for their club, and we talk on with GMs daily about that, and everybody's got the price. It's very rare that it's done that, you could move from 4 to 2, or 2 to 1. It's very rare that happens, because everybody values the player that they have at that pick, and it's very rare that it does change hands. But do you have to explore it? Yes, that's part of my job. Every morning I wake up and go to work and see if we can better the pick, or if we can come up with different options to maximize where we are.
Stephen Wino, Associated Press.
Hey, Bill, seems like the top 3 picks are sort of consensus 1 through 3. Do you feel like you guys are sort of the inflection point of this first round where you could go a lot of different directions at 4?
Stephen, who are the top 3? Who do you got?
Misa, Schaefer, and Frondell.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you got it done. It's already in the bank. All right. Okay. It's interesting because there's so many, things that can move, right? So I think when you just say the order, the thing that makes me flare up is I once met a GM, and he got this player at 4, and he said to me, "I had no idea we're getting the player at 4." I'm like, I don't care who's on that board. We don't take anything for granted, from 1 all the way to 3, and who we're going to get at 4. We dig deep. We go hard, and we don't want any surprises on draft day. So our process, we don't, we go through everything. So. What was the second part of your question? Because I had a hard time getting over the 3. Okay, I'm up by the 3.
No, just do you feel like it is wide open in terms of the amount of quality players available for you at 4, in terms of the choices you have?
Yeah, I think there's a good talent range at that area where we're picking. Now it's just working out the order and finalizing that with the scouts. And the one thing that we do is we look at the player, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We go through everything. We don't hide anything. We're in those conversations, about the player. We never want to draft a player, then you show up at camp, you're like, nobody said his skating wasn't that good, or hey, he had trouble putting on weight. We go through it all. So it's really a good thing. I think we have an experienced scouting staff that, I was always in the the kind of the thought process is, like you never hide anything. You bring everything to light. So we're in that process exploring what's going to come to us at 4, and I like what's there. It's a great opportunity for the club to move ahead.
Jay Stevens, KSL Sports.
Bill, it must be nice to have the 4th pick and not have to have the kind of season that typically gets you the 4th pick. And I know you're always saying best player available rather than position, but with the 4th overall pick, do you start looking position specific?
No, we take the best overall player. That's, listen, I know a lot of guys, they're like, oh, we got to go to the podium and draft the same guy that we drafted the year before. And I'm like, if that's the best player, you should take him, because you have the ability in the NHL to trade players, right? So, if you got a Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby, I'm sure you can trade one of them, right, for some pretty good players. So that's been the theory and the thought process we've always had, is draft the best player available.
Rogan Houston, Deseret News.
Hey Bill, I'm curious, as a former scout yourself, what your kind of theory is in terms of making the pick yourself, or letting your head scout make the pick, or what's your theory for drafting that first round?
Well, it's a little bit different because we're away from the where the actual players are in this particular draft. So somebody from our club will make that pick. Not our 2 head scouts. But I've always believed in a regular draft. If you put the miles in, you deserve to make the pick. So that's the way. And I was kind of brought up in that system, so I'm a firm believer that, hey, listen, if you're doing all the time on the road, you deserve to get up there and make that pick. So I've always been a big believer of letting the head scout or the assistant head scout do it.
Back to Bell.
Hey Bill, at the Combine, Caleb Desnoyers revealed that he had wrist injuries, playing with it for most of the season, said he was going to get an MRI, not sure about surgery. Have you guys gotten any updates on that, and how does that kind of influence the way you look at him on the board?
Well, it's always important to make sure that you go through thorough evaluation when a player's hurt, to make sure you know what you're getting. It's a due diligent process. I leave that up to the medical staff. But we will, just to kind of put in a wide, lens for you, is we're not taking anybody in the draft that we haven't gone through their medical 150%. And if they've had something, in there that we weren't happy about, we follow it up with another medical, usually in Utah or in their hometown through the MRIs and doctors that we know. But we try to be as thorough as we can, because you certainly don't want any surprises when they show up and they're, hey, I got a shoulder surgery I need. Like, you just don't want that. It's not it's not something that you want. And, we've had surgeries where we've drafted Maverick Lamoureux, but we knew what was going on, and our doctors were good with it. So I think you have to go through the process, but with Mr. Desnoyers, we'll certainly, I believe we have done our process, and we'll let you know how that one works out.
Dana Green.
Hey, Bill, when you're evaluating pick versus trade, how much does it come into play that you have so many young prospects and guys that, were injured last year, like TJ didn't get to play a lot?
Yeah.
Does that come into play that you want to give those guys a chance, and maybe you'd be more inclined to make a trade instead and make the pick, obviously, if the value is there? And then I also have a question about free agencies with it right around the corner. How much due diligence have you made? Have you been given the go-ahead to fill some of that salary cap space?
Yeah, well, the first part about it is, like, we're a team that has a lot of options because of, our particular, we've got some prospects in the house, we've got some picks, and we've got some following picks, some extra picks the following year. So there's a lot of options for us, and we're going to explore every option to make sure our team's a better team when we start to play in the fall. I think as far as the free agents in that, we've always kind of firmly believed that if the right free agent's there, we'll sign them. Money's not an issue. We're also at a point with the club, though, that it's not our final piece we're adding. We're still building, and one of the things you have to remember is that you've got Gunther, who plays major minutes for us. He's a young player. Logan Cooley's a young player. And Josh Doan's a young player, and now we're going to put Simashev and Boot. They're going to come in. They're young players too. Most times you don't win in any a championship until your guys are 27, 28, 29. And you look at the McDavids and the Dreisaitl's and the Kachucks and all the guys that are having massive success at the NHL level, the Barkovs, they're not 21 years old. So we have to live in the reality of we've got good players, we've got to add players around, but we don't necessarily need to sell the farm for a 31-year-old, a 35-year-old for $40 million to come in and kind of clog our team up, and then we can't make the signing when we need it, when it's the last piece we need in 5 years to add. So we do have to be smart about it. I've always said this, you see those teams last year that they won the summer, they crushed it, they didn't win the winter. So there's a little patience with our club because we are young, we are maturing right in front of your own eyes. We're going from, we're going into high school next year. How does that sound? We're going from the 8th grade to the 9th grade, and here we go. So you just want to be smart about it, and we do get excited about, hey, we could add this guy and that guy, but not if it's going to hurt us 5 years from now and you guys are coming and saying, hey, does that $9 million to sign that guy, does that hurt us now? Yeah, it does. It's $9 million we could have added in the final piece so we go compete for a Stanley Cup. So there's a little patience in the process that you have to have, and sometimes during that patience you don't win the summer, but you take a step in the in the fall, and that's what counts.
Steven Wino?
Just following up on that, Bill. Matthew Darsh was saying earlier that as GMs with the cap going up this much, you guys have to be disciplined.
Yeah.
How tough is that balance to strike in terms of knowing there's money to spend, knowing there's a bunch of free agents out there, but not also wanting to spend crazy?
Well, we're all super competitive. Our coaching staff is super competitive, and so is our owner. You're not going to be at this level unless you're super competitive. But you have to click into reality, and we can't make Logan Cooley and Dylan Guenther and Josh Doan and the rest of the young players any older than they are right now. So there's a reality of that, and that's what keeps you disciplined. You've got to move forward with the group, and the group will tell you when they're ready. We had it in St. Louis where we completed some trades at the end, the Ryan O'Reillys of the world and the Shens, and put some guys in place, and then we went and signed Bozak, because we needed that piece to finish it off. So we just got to be smart, disciplined. It's part of the game. You get excited about dreaming about those free agents to add in, but at the same time, we've always had success and been able to take a step forward by doing the smart thing, the right thing, and improving our team, but not at the cost of the future, stopping this team from winning when we're supposed to.
Final few questions. Cole Bagley, KSL Sports.
Hey, Bill, just curious, when you guys are going through this process, how big does the player's personality go into whether or not you're going to select them and how they could fit into the culture you're trying to build?
That's a great question. When we draft players, we do a lot of work on them. We go back sometimes, talk to their, Pee Wee coaches and their teachers, and get to know them inside and out. If you have a player sometimes that ends up being your captain, it's not accident that happens. You can see in an early age the leadership and the qualities that these particular young men have, even when they're 15, 16, 17. And so you can really learn a lot about them and kind of predict the future by getting in there and really diving deep, and doing personality tests too helps you out a lot, and the psych doctors and their coaches really can kind of guide you. But most times when you're successful and you're drafting someone that overachieves or becomes your captain or leads you to a championship, it has to do with their personality. So you have to do a lot of work in that.
David Graff with Fox.
You mentioned all the young guys that you guys have right now. What gives you so much confidence with you and your group when you're making these selections?
Well, I think the confidence I always say comes from a source, and our source is the fact that we've been able to draft the Coolies and the Doans and the Gunthers, of the world, and they've been great pieces for us, and now you're going to see the Boots and the Simashevs come in. So confidence comes from our scouting staff and the work that they've done in the past, and you can see what a difference that's made into our organization. And even the fact that last year we had to trade Geeky and Moser, those guys were all drafts from our staff. So you can see at an early time with this organization, the quality scouting that Ryan and Daryl and their staff has provided. If you go to Hockey DB and you look at the Gunther draft, there's 4 or 5 kids that are already playing in the National Hockey League out of that draft, and that's not by accident. That's by the work that they do and how they run their staff. So it's important that we continue that path. We're not getting out of this unless we draft well, and we've got to take those next steps. The hard part is you see the Tijuginlas and you see the Boots and the Simashevs, and it's just waiting for them to come in, and then once they come in, it's waiting for them to be good enough to have impact on your club. But time goes by, and when you invest in that and you get the right coaching around them and the right development, it goes really quick. And good players will peek their head up early, and they'll show you glimpses of how good they are, and then you can hang your hat on that a little bit later on. So I'm really excited about the staff that we have in place here and what they've done so far, and we got a long way to go.
Last 2 questions. We'll start with Brogan Houston.
I'm just wondering about Connor Ingram, if you have any updates on his status, and if the answer is no, if there's a plan to find a contingency there.
Yeah, I haven't checked today on him, but from the point right now, it's all speculation of where he's at, and I don't really want to comment. He's a great kid. I know he's in the program, and I know that he's we wish him the best, and hopefully he can get on the other side of this, and we'll continue to look for updates.
Last question, Bill Fraser.
Yeah, Bill, in terms of internal decisions that could influence choices around the draft and free agency, how do you see things standing with Jack McBain and his RFA status?
We've had great talks with Jack and his agency, and along with Jack, and he's been very professional on his side, and I think they're very happy with how the talks have gone, and we just make some further progress as we go along. He's got a great agent he works with, Newport Sports and Pat Morris, and they do a great job. So it's not an easy fight, but it's good. I think we're both on the same page. Hopefully, at some point in time during the summer, we move a little closer to getting the deal done.
All right, thank you, Bill, and thank you everybody for your time.
Thank you, guys.